The sunlight shone through my window curtains, painting golden patterns on the floor of my room. It was the day my friends and I were finally going to embark on our long-awaited adventure into the countryside, starting a journey of exploration into the unknown. I had meticulously planned everything. The car was fueled up, the maps were folded in the glove compartment, and even a special playlist was ready to accompany our trip. As I packed my backpack, I could hardly contain the excitement for the moments that lay ahead. My friends arrived shortly after, carrying their own bags and smiles of anticipation. We greeted each other with hugs and laughter, all sharing the same contagious energy. It was clear we were ready to leave the city's routine behind and dive into the unknown adventure awaiting us. With one last look back, we locked the door and set off towards our destination. The road stretched out before us like a promise of discoveries and thrills, and I knew this trip would leave an indelible mark on our lives. The road stretched ahead of us like a winding serpent, cutting through the arid landscape of the countryside. The sunlight had completely disappeared, leaving behind only the darkness of night. The stars' glow above us was the only company in the vast, silent expanse surrounding us. As the car moved along the deserted road, the silence became almost palpable, enveloping us like a somber cloak. The car's headlights cut through the darkness ahead, revealing only small stretches of the desolate landscape. As we advanced, a sense of unease began to creep into our hearts, as if something was lurking in the shadows beyond our sight. The wind whispered through the car's half-open windows, creating a ghostly echo that seemed to reverberate along the entire length of the road. Each winding curve took us deeper into the darkness, pulling us further from civilization and plunging us into an unknown and unsettling world. Despite our efforts to keep a lively conversation and spirits high, there was a palpable tension in the air, as if we were all aware of the fragility of our position on the deserted road at night. And as the car moved forward, a sense of foreboding began to form in my mind, as if something terrible was about to happen. The engine purred softly as we drove along the deserted road, but suddenly, a strange noise cut through the night silence. It was as if the car itself was groaning in agony, struggling to maintain its mechanical integrity. My friends and I exchanged nervous glances, sharing a dark premonition that something was terribly wrong. The engine began to sputter, coughing and choking as if it were battling an invisible force consuming it from within. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to stay calm as the car started to lose speed. I glanced at the dashboard, desperately searching for an explanation, but all I saw were flashing warning lights, as if the car itself was trying to warn us of imminent danger. With a final jolt, the engine fell silent, leaving us enveloped in the deadly quiet of the deserted road. My friends and I looked at each other, speechless, each of us acutely aware that we were completely at the mercy of the surrounding darkness. As we stood on the deserted road, engulfed in darkness and silence, a piercing sound tore through the air. It was a sharp, distant scream, echoing through the hills around us like a ghostly wail. My friends and I glanced at each other, our eyes wide with terror. That sound wasn't human, at least not entirely. There was a strange and supernatural quality to it, as if it came from a source beyond human understanding. Before we could react, the scream began to draw nearer, growing in intensity with each passing second. It was as if something was rushing towards us, moving through the darkness with alarming speed. Then, suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a distorted and grotesque sight, something that didn't belong in this world. Its eyes gleamed in the darkness, casting an eerie glow over us as it advanced relentlessly towards us. My friends and I barely had time to react before we were consumed by absolute panic. Without hesitation, we ran into the bushes at the side of the road, desperately seeking refuge from the unknown threat closing in on us. In the tight embrace of the shadows of the underbrush, we hid, our hearts pounding frantically in our chests. The silence around us was oppressive, interrupted only by our own fear-choked breaths. I looked around, desperately searching for any sign of what was pursuing us, but the shadows were so dense they seemed to have a life of their own, dancing and twisting like living beings under some sinister will. Suddenly, we heard strange sounds around us. They were like distant voices, indistinct murmurs echoing inside our own minds. There was no escaping the feeling that we were being watched by unseen eyes, every move of ours tracked by an invisible presence in the bushes. My friends and I huddled closer together, our bodies trembling with terror as we awaited our fate. Every small sound was amplified by the darkness, turning the underbrush into a labyrinth of nightmares from which there seemed no escape. Finally, after an eternity of terror in the bushes, the sound of murmurs and whispers began to fade, dissipating into the darkness like mist in the morning sun. With our hearts still pounding irregularly, we cautiously ventured out of our hiding place, each movement careful and filled with apprehension. The silence of the night enveloped us once again as we emerged from the underbrush, as if the darkness itself held its breath while watching us. For a moment, we dared to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, the nightmare was over and we would be safe once more. With trembling steps, we returned to our car, our minds still buzzing with the echo of the dark events we had just faced. As we reached the vehicle, a small sense of security settled in our hearts, as if the solid, familiar metal was a shield against the horrors of the night. As we settled inside the car, turning on the headlights and praying that the machine would obey our commands, we knew the fleeting calm was just an illusion. The darkness still surrounded us, ready to engulf us again at any moment, and the grotesque figure and sinister sounds continued to haunt our thoughts. With the car's engine roaring back to life, we didn't hesitate for a second. We knew we needed to escape from that accursed place before it was too late. With trembling hands on the wheel, I pressed hard on the accelerator, feeling the car roar in response, eager to leave behind that scene of horror. The deserted road stretched ahead of us, a dark tunnel cutting through the nighttime landscape. Every kilometer we put behind us was a victory gained against the evil that pursued us. My friends were as quiet as I was, their faces pale and contemplative as we pushed through the darkness. For a moment, we dared to believe we were safe, that we had escaped the nightmare that had haunted us. But then, suddenly, a glimpse of movement in the rearview mirror made me freeze in place. A dark shadow seemed to be following us, slithering through the road's shadows like a sinister serpent. Fear consumed us, igniting our survival instincts as we struggled to maintain control of the car. Every curve of the road was a battle against the unknown, every moment of hesitation an opportunity for the darkness to swallow us whole. Finally, after a desperate escape, we managed to leave behind the shadows of that deserted road and return to the relative safety of civilization. The car continued its journey through the night, each kilometer distancing us further and further from the horror we had experienced. But even as we finally reached our destination, the experience haunted us like a persistent shadow, lurking in the darkest corners of our minds. The pale faces of my friends reflected the trauma we had endured on that old deserted road, their eyes still haunted by the horrors we had witnessed. Since that terrible night, deserted roads have been avoided as if they were hell itself. Every winding curve, every dark shadow, reminds me of the grotesque figure that pursued us on that fateful night. Though I've tried to rationalize what we saw as a trick of the darkness, deep down in my heart, I know that experience changed us forever. We will never be the same after that night, let alone forget how terrifying it is to be stranded on a deserted road in the dead of night.